Sal Bart here from True Stories, and welcome to the Couch to Creator podcast.
Where we hit record on real-life conversations about all things creator. The wins and defeats, the economy,
The lifestyle,
the news, the gossip, anything you can think of going on in the creator world, we're here to talk about it.
And this episode is sponsored by Riverside.
More on them later. Today, we're talking beastification, which may sound like an odd term, but we'll explain.
It's about MrBeast.
It's actually not really about MrBeast. It's about retention hacking. You may not have heard of the term, but you probably have heard of a YouTuber called MrBeast. And the two are inextricably linked. They're both dangerous, and we need to talk about it.
That's why we're here.
We're here today to unpack what it really means and apparently the potential of moving away from it.
And why that's not going to work.
Retention hacking has been the gold standard in achieving these crazy high numbers, the virality on YouTube and on other social media. But is that about to change?
We've seen some big discussions on socials talking about this new generation, new wave of creatives and just people in general looking for more wholesome, authentic content.
There's actually a group of creators calling themselves the new wave.
It's nice. It's
pretty cool. Pretty cool.
How do we get involved? How do we join?
I don't know, but
I think we're too old.
I think it's quite an exclusive Gen Z sort of
we're too old.
Club.
I think we passed those years.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is talk that people no longer want this retention hacking kind of editing, and these guys are saying, we want longer videos, slower paced, less editing essentially. But we're here to tell you, I think it's not going to happen.
Why?
The number one reason is that people are misinterpreting this idea of retention hacking. They're seeing it as an editing style.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong. In my opinion, this is literally the latest scientific development in literally what it says on the tin, hacking people's brains to keep their attention for longer. I don't think it's an editing style at all. It has become an editing style as a result of the fact that it works so well.
Yeah. And something like that just can't go away once you've opened that kind of worms.
Exactly. And I mean, the only time I think it will go away is if it is replaced with a new, better, more effective method to keep your eyeballs on the screen.
Yeah. And hopefully that would be wholesome content.
Something tells me it's not going to be.
No, you got to think of relating to all things, not just content on social media, but also news sources. Clickbait is the gold standard now. It used to be just clickbait is a thing on YouTube. Now every single news article has a clickbait title. And people aren't even necessarily going to click into that article to read it, but it's just all about how to hack your brain and get your attention as fast as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you know that sort of science-backed, that those science-backed results are being used by huge news outlets, traditional news outlets like The Guardian, the BBC and stuff like that, they are now starting to use clickbait titles, even if it's a bit subtle, then that I think it's a technique that's here to stay. And the video editing style has just followed that pattern.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten more that the content is just sensationalist.
Yeah.
But it's been like that for a while. It didn't just start with MrBeast. It's been from the very beginning of social media.
I don't know. I think that, I think from the beginning of social media is maybe a bit far. Obviously, things that stood out on social media did well. But I think in terms of this retention hacking as we know it, based on my research, I would attribute it to around 2012 era with Logan Paul sort of style YouTube channels where they were
That's kind of the start of content for me.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, before that we had... a lot of social media and Instagrams, just had nice photos and stuff. And I think, at that point, all of a sudden, people realized that they could spend big money. They could invest in doing sensational stuff like blowing up houses or cars or driving supercars into walls, doing really kind of outrageous, stupid stuff. And that's when this sensationalism really slipped into the mainstream of content creation. I think it's just been getting more extreme since then. So we mentioned these new wave creators, and actually ahead of this podcast, I did a little bit of research. I saw an article from the published press, some of our favourites, Colin and Samir, and they did a bit of research based on this new wave group of creators who are arguing that the spectacle style content is out. They looked at stats, and I think this is super, super interesting. They're saying that you need to look deeper into the metrics to see whether this new wave style of editing works. And they're actually arguing that it kind of does. So one of the things that they looked at is like engagement, levels of engagement per 1,000 views. So they looked at things like MrBeast, Logan Paul, and these crazy high view count channels and looked at their engagement rate. And they found that, for example, Arak received 1.5 comments per 1,000 views. But someone like Ryan NG, who is a proud member of the New Wave, a whopping 13.9 per 1,000 views. That's incomparable.
Yeah.
Do you think this is anything that's like, do you think there's any value there?
I think it's a different argument because retention hacking and the kind of beastification of videos, I don't think anyone would ever argue that that's generated like high engagement, high community values. I think that's never the intended purpose of this kind of brain hacking.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, they looked at a couple of other metrics, like they compared Ryan Trahan's percentage of likes even. So it's a far less effort, required for that sort of engagement. And like compared him to Natalie Lynn, he had like 3.85%. And Ryan Trahan is a super likable creator.
Yeah.
3.85%. Natalie's 10%.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just really obvious. Like, retention hacking is psychological and kind of like part of an addictive process, but you can't hack community.
Yeah.
It's like the fundamental thing to humans. You can't fake that. You can't force that.
Do you think the human brain knows that it's watched a video that's 6 minutes or 8 minutes long, but in a way that it's being manipulated? Do you think that on a subconscious level, we are left with some bitter emotion after watching a video like that?
I think it really depends your level of awareness and what you're watching and everything. I think that's really hard to say just like generally. I wouldn't say so now.
No.
Like for the majority of people. I mean, as creators ourselves, we're aware of this retention hacking video like editing styles and stuff to keep us engaged. And so it does make us angry because it's like if
it feels like you're being cheated.
Yeah, you'll be like they're telling you that it'll be at the end of the video, so you have to watch it till the end of the video. And like that does feel quite sour in a way that before this even became a thing, you would never have known.
No.
You would have just been like, oh yeah, this video is really good. I'm going to stay to the end to find out what happened.
Yeah. Let us know if you've ever had like an experience where, you kind of noticed that you're being hacked during watching a video, and you've had like this feeling like, oh, this has become a negative experience. I'd be super curious to hear if people have had that.
I think it's also really fascinating in terms of age as well, because
Good shout.
We have been through the process of social media just being social media.
Yeah.
And so we can see the difference. Whereas, for example, like my nephews, who we have a podcast episode with him.
Legend.
He's talking about MrBeast videos and that he watches these creators. I am sure, well, I know that that kids have no idea what's happening to their brains.
Because it is scientific, right? What's happening to their brains. Like we're talking dopamine releases every time, every time that there's this spike of activity, it's actually teasing our brain in a chemical way.
I actually use a form of retention hacking when I'm editing a video, when I show it to you.
How so?
So how I judge how good the video is that I've edited is I watch where your attention goes.
Mm.
And if you look away for a second, if you look to the other side of the room, if you move something on the desk, if you like pause and do something, it's a note. It's a note for me that I lost you. And if I lose you, how am I supposed to keep anyone else?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Riverside.
Riverside is already known to be the best solution to record high-quality podcasts with remote guests. So even when the internet drops out, your files are constantly being recorded in the highest possible quality locally on your hard drive.
Which it will cut out.
It always does.
But what we weren't expecting was how much of a game-changing tool it is for podcast editing. You can upload your podcast and use the text-based editor to remove ums, ahs, and any parts of the podcast you don't want to see the light of day. Riverside can help you generate captions, remove filler words, and even create AI-generated magic clips.
We've even been using these automatically generated transcripts to turn our podcasts into SEO-rich blog posts.
Who's been doing that? It's me.
And if you want to check it out, go to riverside.fm and sign up using the code TRIO-STORIES to get a whopping 15% off.
Trio Stories.
Trio
It's us.
Stories.
There's quite clearly three of us. Trio.
Thank you so much, Riverside. Back to the episode. We mentioned about the dopamine being released chemically. So surely that is, extremely hard to control. And obviously in kids, that is a whole different kettle of fish that I think poses huge risks in terms of like addiction.
Mm.
But even in adults, it's difficult to prevent or do much about, really.
No, you have to be super active about it.
Yeah.
Like if you are passively going about modern day life, phones, content, internet.
Oh, it'll just absorb you like a black hole.
Yeah. The modern day life and life as humans, it's we have so much given to us constantly that we're like gorging on everything. Yeah. It's like indulgence in every aspect of life.
The overload of stimuli is essentially you're being retention hacked from every angle.
Yeah.
All the time.
It's just like the same thing with food.
Mm.
There's certain types of food that are more addictive, give you more dopamine. And so you will just gorge on those foods unless you're absolutely conscious about it. And I think that is really fascinating in that there will be a percentage of the population that do absolutely want to be conscious to that. Mm. So like just in the same way that people diet or people exercise and people are aware of these things and go out of their way to avoid the bad stuff, there will be a community of people who don't want that type of retention hacking, that kind of thing in their lives.
And I think that's where that opportunity lies for these new wave creators and for the people who are saying, there's going to be a movement away from this retention hacking style content. There's going to be a need for more wholesome content. I think probably that's true because we've probably hit a level of addiction or a level of the quantity of content that people are consuming, that there's more and more people that are feeling like they're waking up or they're saying, you know what, enough's enough. I'm going to try and move away from that. And that's where that gap will create. And I think it will be getting bigger. But I do think, make no mistake, it's absolutely not going to replace retention hacking. Retention hacking is still going to be the main tool that's used by editors to put out videos that go viral.
It's been the same thing with video and films and everything. Like people, they want to keep you engaged. Like I said, retention hacking, it's not like a trend.
No.
It's something that's here to stay in some form or another. And I guess it depends on what kind of people that you want to attract as to how much you want to engage in that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't particularly like that style of content. We were watching a MrBeast video earlier, and we had to go off it because it's just too much stimuli. So I don't particularly want to attract the kind of viewers who want that kind of stimulus.
I've got a question, actually. I've just had a thought. I mean, retention hacking we see as a certain way right now because you're hacking the retention in a very specific way. Fast transitions, fast cuts, loads of overload of effects, etc., etc. But surely this new, let's say, talking about this new wave of creators as just an example, these guys, a lot of their content is very heavily based on emotions. Isn't that just another way of retention hacking? A different method, you know, where they're trying to highlight and almost I don't know what the word is, like not engorge, but they're trying to really show those emotions, really let you in on an intimate level to, okay, if this, it sounds very negative, but manipulate the viewer emotionally to feel a certain way. And
that's what stories and films and books and
are about.
Everything is about. It's like, it's to what level of the human existence you want to call it, like hacking, you know?
Yeah. It's almost like
you can manipulate people with emotions and stories and stuff. You don't have to.
It's just whether the connotations there as well, and
it's also how natural it is as well.
Yeah. I guess, and it also depends on what your actual goal is when you're creating a video or a piece of content. Because if you are going out to be like, okay, I want to get 10 million views, I can do this retention hacking like this or retention hacking like this, and you're doing this on purpose, then yeah. And if you're doing a charity video and you say, oh, okay, if we manage to get if we include a crying girl that looks like she hasn't eaten in weeks, and that's going to get us the views, that's retention hacking in a different way.
Yeah.
It's you're purposefully playing with people's emotion.
Yeah.
And the ethics of that obviously are, I don't know, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying the ethics of that are somewhere in the grey area, probably.
Yeah, I want to go back to talking about it from like a creative perspective. Like, as a creator creating this type of content that's like keeping people engaged in whatever way that might be. From an editor's perspective,
yes,
I find that quite difficult because, and I believe a lot of other editors are like this, like editing, a lot of it is intuition. And then from intuition, you obviously develop skills and learn techniques and stuff. But people's attention spans are getting shorter. Yeah. Editors' attention spans are also getting shorter. So it's difficult to judge how much you're influencing your editing by your stretch of attention span. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then obviously that's like, it layers, doesn't it? Because you feel like, you're putting your sort of short attention to it. Then the viewer is layering another layer of their attention span not being very long. And I think
my attention span is definitely shorter than yours. I'm much more impatient with
videos.
I don't give them much of a chance past a minute if they don't grab me. And I'm aware that not everybody views videos like that, but then in terms of editing,
Yeah. Interesting.
How does the effect of an editor impact videos in terms of like that kind of content?
Well, in theory, you would think that it was beneficial because it means that you can empathize with your viewer. But the process of editing is completely different than the process of consuming. The process of editing is active, whereas the process of consuming more or less is passive. So I definitely think it's detrimental. I think it must be detrimental.
Yeah, and content and social media content, like, it trickles down from film and TV.
Yeah, a lot
and
of it,
obviously, if what we're saying is true, you'd see the same movement in films and TV. You would see films and TV getting much more energetic, faster, shorter, like Marvel films.
But if you also kind of look at it this way, I think you've got like the different plethora of media. So like in my opinion, Netflix and the streaming services are a perfect example of this retention hacking culture going crazy. They are just releasing masses of shite, to be honest, of just repeats of the same stories, shot as quickly as possible on a budget because they want to keep people on a monthly subscription. So they need quantity of fresh stuff for people to watch. And then you've got cinema on the other end with, in the past couple of years, masterpieces like Oppenheimer, Barbie being released, films that aren't being cut down in length or aren't being retention hacked. I mean, look at Oppenheimer. It's very slow paced. It's, how did that hit the mainstream if we're all about retention hacking? But I think cinema is like the holy grail, the art form. And it's like, here is our norm with all these streaming services, but people still from time to time want to go and do the fine dining, don't they?
Correct. But I also have some research to drop on you.
Bring it.
There's actually, so I've read some studies, like scientific studies about how film and TV has changed over the last 75 years.
Oh, wow.
And so without I'm going to have to just spoil it, but mean shot lengths in commercial films have dropped from 10 to 15 seconds to 3 to 5 seconds.
Okay, so there's also that impact. Yeah.
There's a sequence, it says here, it was a quote from the thing, there's a sequence in Skyfall where Bond is chasing the villain through the tube and the mean shot length is 1.5 seconds and it doesn't even feel like a fast-paced segment. So it is true that this is happening to films and TV. It's obvious if you don't have, if your attention span is getting shorter and shorter for everyday content, it's going to be still shorter overall.
Yeah.
And it's not just about pacing as well. There's been not a lot of research. It was very minimal research, but
there's been some research.
There's been some research, but like scientific articles about how they're using the editing in films in the same way as MrBeast does.
Okay, but I guess it's more subtle.
The shot length is obviously getting shorter, more motion in the frame, more camera motion, and also the luminance.
Brighter. Or changes?
Changes. So actually I think they found that films are being seen to get darker and darker, like Game of Thrones and stuff. Like films and TV weren't that dark before. Now it's getting darker and darker. And yeah, part of that is just like the intrigue, the focus.
And then they go to a bright shot and then there's the change as well, yeah.
And yeah, the physical form of popular film has changed immensely. And I can read this bit that it says, we believe that all of these changes have been created by filmmakers seeking to control the attention of their viewers and possibly enhance viewer involvement in the film.
Wow. It's interesting. So your research shows, I mean, more so than I even kind of thought or imagined, that those changes have trickled to this gourmet media, which we can call cinema. Well, in a way, for me, as a creator, YouTube is like this gourmet social media, let's say, or platform for creators. And I think, it's important for people to kind of be aware that, YouTube is incomparably bigger than TikTok or Instagram or Facebook in terms of the viewership and in terms of the...
Is it?
Yeah. I was really surprised as well.
Do you have the numbers?
I don't have the numbers here, but...
well, I'm going to need receipts for that. I'll let you figure that out.
No, but, I want to do my point. It's... what I'm getting at is it's a platform with heritage, basically.
Yeah.
It's a platform that has seen these trends come and go. and it's a platform that, in my opinion, will outlive the TikTok trends, the
Yeah, it's
real
like
trends.
it's like a stepping ladder. I can see what you mean. Like you've got TikTok, Instagram, and stuff down here. Then you've got YouTube. Then you've got TV. Then you've got film, kind of thing.
Yeah,
It is
yeah. And so I'm just curious as to whether YouTube will have an answer. And obviously by that, I mean the creators on YouTube, because YouTube is only a sum of its creators. Will the creators have an answer for when this retention hacking comes to a head, where we do get a certain number of people saying, oh, we don't want this anymore and stuff? Is it going to happen at all, do you think? Or is this just now a long-term thing?
I really think it'll end up balanced in the exact same way that the diet and food is balanced or not so balanced in the world. I think like the addiction to food and the addiction to this kind of fast-paced content, I think it's the exact same thing. There are people that will want to avoid it, and there are people that will unconsciously be dragged into it. So yeah, I think it's really good for people to become aware of that and be conscious of that and mindful of what they're consuming. But at the same time, it is so easy to fall into the trap. Like, I know that when I'm personally not feeling great, like I go to TikTok because that encompasses all of my attention. I don't need to think outside of that.
Yeah, so it's like, it's just something that you switch off your brain, you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a form of retention hacking by TikTok.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I have it written down that YouTube is the biggest in practically every metric. I think it's not as big as Facebook, but I wasn't counting Facebook.
Yeah,
I was
it doesn't
counting as
count.
anything that is actually
Video
showing content.
platform.
Yeah, basically a video platform. So I've got the numbers. So
As you should.
yes, Facebook is the biggest platform, but when I was researching, I remember now, I did discard it because I think it isn't really where we consume content, like video content. So YouTube is the second biggest with 2,500 million active users in 2023. And then the next one down is 2,000 with Instagram. And TikTok has a mere 1,210, so nearly half of the viewership of YouTube. So
this was in 2023, obviously not that long ago, but I am really interested to see how that changes. But yeah, I think it's a big movement thing in society. It's not just like, oh, it's a trend, or oh, it's a psychological addiction. I also think it's important how we approach it as a society.
Yeah.
Just like in the way, food is discussed more and talked about, and healthy eating and
yeah, and I think it needs to be less like looked down upon and being like, oh, you're addicted to this and you're addicted to that. People need to get a little bit more serious, more mature about it, and like understand that it's designed to do that. So you need to come at it, you need to approach it with a certain like sensitivity to the fact that we're all affected by it, and possibly a bit of education, a bit of dialogue about it is actually what's needed, rather than anything like, we need to create rehab centers for people that are scrolling TikTok too much, and these extreme sort of responses.
I get what you're saying. I think it's also important to recognize that it's a spectrum. You can have retention hacking techniques in your video that are completely like harmless.
Yeah.
And then you can have ones that are actually weaponized.
Yeah, I guess it's like with everything. It's when you take it too far that it becomes a problem, right?
And at the same time, I think that people are becoming more aware of it, and like this new wave of creators like are enjoying it less and less. And I know that as soon as I see a creator repeating a form of retention hacking, it doesn't work for me anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to do an example of a film booth. When we first started watching him for a while, I was like, this guy's on it with video, like absolutely love it. The editing's great. The the pacing's great, everything is great. And then after a certain number of his videos, I suddenly found where the techniques were.
Yeah.
I was aware of it, and then I couldn't sit through them as much anymore.
And he uses a super structured approach, doesn't he? Like pretty much all of his videos follow a very prescribed structure because it's successful. So of course, why not? But like you say, once you know, it's like difficult. And I'm sure that us as creators, we pick up on it quicker.
Way
like
more than other people, yeah. But like maybe that will also happen with creators like MrBeast. And I think that is what's happening and why there's this movement of the anti-beastification. But I think the most vulnerable people to are his viewership, which are children.
Yeah, or young people, or also, I mean, and just in general, I think, you know, the average viewer who is not even at all from a creative background and stuff is also far more susceptible. So therefore, you know, when we're talking about the masses, generally the masses are more susceptible to being retention hacked. So to summarize, I think
it's a bit of a moral issue, really.
It is a little bit of a moral issue, and I think there's definitely some interesting moral dilemmas there. And I think it's probably one that is still an emerging thing. But yeah, do you got anything to add, or should we wrap it up?
I don't know. I feel like we're quite like serious and negative about this one, and like I think there's also very much a conversation to be had more in a positive way about it.
Okay, yeah. That's true.
But I'm not sure quite what that conversation is yet.
I think it's about the fact that, you know, for editors, this weapon in the toolkit, or this tool in the toolkit, has enabled videos to be a lot more impactful.
Beast philanthropy.
You know, I mean, this is Beast Philanthropy
philanthropy is an
awesome.
Incredible channel, and that kind of video can hack my brain every day of the week.
Yeah, and you can see that is actually a very positive application. He's using the same techniques that he's used in his viral videos to do good, and that's awesome. But I think just in general, you know, even just in general, us as editors, we can try and use these techniques to make our work more impactful, more interesting, keep people, you know, if you're trying to keep someone engaged, like Duolingo keeps you engaged in learning a foreign language, are you doing something wrong? Probably not. The owl is not.
Is manipulative as hell.
It is manipulative, but it's trying to do something good for you.
The owl, like, I don't know. I think that's becoming a moral issue, you know?
Borderline.
It's just like, I worry about him sometimes. I'm just going to wake up and he's going to be at the foot of the bed like, have you done your lesson today? Yeah,
that's true. That's true. But yeah, Duolingo, I mean, another perfect example of retention hacking, gamification in the form of an app, an educational app. But again, seeing how effective it is scary for applications that are more nefarious.
Yeah.
But we were talking about positive applications.
Positive applications.
Positive. So yeah, I think there is a lot.
Yeah, and I just think as creators, we do have to be mindful of the information and presentation to people, like what we're putting out there.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of good. It means, you know,
and also from like a creative perspective as well. If you don't enjoy that kind of content, don't make that kind of content.
That's a great point.
I think it's like you're just gonna hate it. You're not gonna stick to it. It's just a waste of time, basically.
Yeah. You've got to make what you believe in ultimately, and I think that's a good advice for creators. Full stop. Just like even outside of the remits of this episode, you've got to make what you believe in, regardless of whether that is blowing up straight away, because the non-retention hacking stuff is going to take longer to,
like vlogs.
to get some traction, like because it's just the way it works. But it doesn't mean
psychology.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's worthless. You know?
No, it's like it depends on the effect you're searching for, the result,
the audience,
the satisfaction.
Yeah,
it's everything, and it's like how much of your creativity are you willing to sacrifice for the views?
Yeah,
from
Dan Mace.
Yeah,
the editing podcast. That was a great cracking quote.
Yeah, I highly recommend that episode. He's an amazing creator, and funnily enough, he is MrBeast's philanthropy editor.
I think he actually films them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the
chief creative officer, CCO. So yeah, I mean, to
Wait,
wrap
no,
up.
what I was saying, I hadn't finished.
Sorry.
The creativity, how much of your creativity are you willing to abandon for the views? That is honestly something that we have to consider every piece of content we make.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we made that reel about the mystery box and it's done badly, really badly, but I thought it was a cool reel. And ultimately, like, do you just say, I like that? And, oh, it's done badly. In my head, it's done badly, 1,500 views or 1,000 views. Is that badly? Is that good? Like, we're making these judgments ourselves, but ultimately, it's about whether you can live with yourself after, with what you put out, kind of thing. So, but I don't mean that in like the dramatic way. I just mean like, how do you feel about what you make?
Yeah.
Does it make you happy? Does it make you inspired? And if so, that's what you need to
Or
make.
the opposite. If like the longer form videos, slower pacing, if that bores you, why would you make it?
Exactly.
You don't need to make it. And which is why I find myself very much somewhere in between, like a fairly irregular pacing video is what keeps me most entertained, and so that's how I edit.
So to summarize, I think retention hacking is here to stay. I don't think it's a trend. I think it's going to be prevalent for the years to come. However, I also think there will be a space for the longer, slower pace. There is a space, and there will be a growing space. That's what I meant to say. There will be a growing space because people will get fed up.
Everything happens in cycles. Like, now it's been the big trend of this fast-paced stuff. So of course there will be a gap for people wanting something different.
Yeah.
And so once that gap is filled, it might return to the psychological hacking stuff again.
And I think what's most likely is that we are going to find that in a year or two, some very clever people come up with a new, more effective method or an addition.
It's probably already in play, but we haven't noticed it yet.
Quite possibly. Or an addition or an upgrade to this retention hacking that we're experiencing now, and it'll be even more effective.
TikTok are probably working hard on it.
Yeah, TikTok 3.0 or whatever. And yeah, brains will be scrambled.
But that's why we just got to keep making content, good stuff for people to see,
Fucking cowboys. We're just watching Yellowstone at the moment.
We are watching Yellowstone.
Good show. Hope you enjoyed this.
But that was super slow, actually. Just like, I had to bear through like the first 2 episodes before I was interested.
Yeah, because
I had to grit my teeth. Like, if I was watching that alone, I would have been long
It's
gone.
because your brain's scrambled.
It's a couple of years of TikTok. That's what it'll do to you.
Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope your brains are not scrambled. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. There's plenty more Couch to Creator podcast available on all major platforms. Thank you so much to Riverside for sponsoring this episode. Please give us a 5-star rating or a like or wherever you're watching,
on
whatever you can do. Anything you can do will help. And
thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. You'll see us, and we will see you in the next one.
And you will hear us.
You'll mostly hear us.
But we won't hear you. But maybe if you drop us a DM, we can hear your thoughts because we'd love to hear that. So, in the next one.
Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts.
Bye.
Bye.